Hello, I'm the Smoking Cheddar, but you probably already knew that. So we're a fair way into this new L4, the Aegean Sea, the one that's with the Navy, and I thought I'd just throw my hat in as to what I thought about this map and its design. I wanted to get a few days or just over a week and a bit in the L4 to see how it panned out. The mechanics that are unique to each map are obviously always different. And this one has some very interesting ones that I really like. And I think this should kind of be the standard for Lilith going forwards. And I'll explain why as I go along. So, the first thing I'd like to point out is that we have a northwest zone and a north or a northern area. And you can actually airlift to either of these zones. Now, if you're in the Aegean Sea already, or you've seen a lot of YouTube videos already, you can probably just like slide through this section because it is just going over the fact that you can airlift into your coalition's territory. It does require an additional type of airlift resource. As you can see, if I was to move from the northwest zone into the into the northern area, it would require one of these additional tickets on top of the cost for using an airlift. Now, you can only move into, as I said, coalition territory, and once you land, you can't deploy your base inside there. But there's a few things that I noticed that's worth adding. One, you no longer block coalition builds. So if you deploy and they decide to move next to you and they start a build, that seems to be a thing of the past, which is great. Something else that I noticed when my resource trucks were coming back was that the resource trucks that were inside coalition area also got me alliance coin. So those of you who farm alliance coin through using your own territory, much like I do, so I can get as many speed ups as possible, that is a really good way of getting alliance coin. Your ally perhaps on this side of the map is in trouble, you airlift into an area like here, you drive over the border, you deploy your base, you engage in the combat, you win the combat, and then they decide they're going to build there. You don't really have to move, you can just log out and get on with your day. I thought that was a really neat thing. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. 10 out of 10. Something else that I noticed was that the safe zone line does not run all the way up to the edge of the map. This means that you can go anywhere from the start of the L4. This is good. So this L4, you're split into two teams, into two coalitions, and the rules are stated when you join that you're not allowed to have the four most powerful versus the four most weakest. It has to be relatively balanced on paper, and there's a mechanic in the game that prevents that from happening. So it will assign four alliances as tier 1 and four alliances as tier 2, and you have to have two from each in order to form a team. And then what it does is it will spawn one from each of those teams on one spit of land, and you fight effectively independently. But you don't have to, because you can fly around the map and you can drive or use your ships to get around the map to help your opponent, or sorry, to help your allies defeat your opponents if they're struggling. Now, in this L4 in particular, that's more or less what we've done, and I'm with TS on server 29 this time, and most of our enemies are entirely or close to their safe zone borders, with the only exception being these people here who have built to the complete north as well of their safe zone, I guess just to give them a little bit of extra places to go. Now, the naval fighting, I've done quite a bit of it. I really enjoy it. I think it's pretty good. I like the way it's been capped so far back, so everyone, even lower level players, lower power level players, they can still participate quite easily. There is a few issues I have with it, but they're nothing major. It's more of the length of time it takes to do things, the lack of officers predominantly, um, and stuff relating to officers and the game mechanics surrounding that. I will do a dedicated video on the ships themselves as the technology tree gets released. The tech tree still isn't out as of yet, so until the tech tree is released, I am going to hold off on doing a video specifically deep diving into the ships. But I've had a lot of playtime with the destroyers. I'm a destroyer man. All three of my ships are all destroyers, one from each faction, and you have your tanking ship from the Martyr, you have your medium armored ships from Vanguard and Liberty for your destroyers, and then you've got obviously your specialist ships, one from each faction, the aircraft carrier, the frigate, and the submarine. Do not underestimate the frigate. I have come up against someone who invested quite heavily in the frigate in this L4, and I paid the price thinking that's just going to be a weak ship. It's not. It does hit particularly hard, and it hits particularly quick. It's very, very fast as well, so you can't really get away from it once it starts to win a fight. But I digress. I do like the way that the safe zone is a little bit smaller, and it is encouraging you to build outside of it. That you can also build in any direction because there is no natural mountain or border that's been set up, so you can build outside of the safe zone. There is no reason for an alliance to just give up in this. You can airlift to the other side of the map. You can get stuck in with your allies. If you are struggling, you can ask them for help. The allies system. This is something I think they should do for every single L4. It will prevent alliances and tactical officers from running analysis and saying, hey, we need these three people on our side, so we're guaranteed a victory. It is a bit more, there's more flexibility. So if you're not aware, this is the system I was referring to. This is the team. You have Valiant Lions and you have Fierce Wolves, and you have 2 from tier 2 and 2 from tier 1. And what's really good about this is that there is no final hold. There's no, your alliance will get 2 factories and we get 2 labs. No. If members of the coalition hold it, it contributes to all. So it promotes team effort. Our alliance does not need to any more or any less negotiate or swap a held objective with other members within the coalition. This is fantastic. It lightens the load on the diplomacy officers. I've seen it go through the motions. It's very tedious for people in the last week of the L4 to say, hey, the battle's pretty much over. Who's going to get what? And then there's arguing over, oh, I want this settlement, I want that lab, we want the final hold, we want the final touch. That's been removed as an argument from the players. So it is simply a case of you just have to do your part and you have to hold on to your objective so your coalition will win, and it'll win big. And as you can see here, they're calling it faction, not coalition. As you can see here, reach 30 faction points, capture any lighthouse, capture any military lab, capture any ocean fort, and so on and so forth. But here's a good one. Control 2 settlements at the end of the conquest. Now, obviously, your own settlement doesn't count, but we're in a group of 3. This probably should be changed to say holding a enemy settlement, because otherwise this is going to be a very easy one to achieve. Here it says control to arms factories. They haven't opened yet, but the military labs have, and our coalition owns, I think, pretty much all of them. I think there's 4. There's a lab. There's a lab. There's a lab. There's a lab. Okay, so our coalition does own all 4 of the military labs, and as a result, at the end of the L4, it looks like we're more or less guaranteed to get the 2 reward from that. And it's worth noting that this reward, as a result of everyone in the coalition pitching in, or the faction and pitching in to try and get all of these rewards, they're automatically given out to everyone. I think this is a really, really, really sensible way of doing things. It detracts from backdoor deals with the enemy. It detracts from people just not asking for help or giving up. It makes every single fight for every single objective worth it, whether it is your alliance that captures it or whether it is your allies who capture it. It doesn't matter as long as it's held by the faction. This system needs to be rolled out into every single L4, regardless of the new airlift system that's in place, regardless of the new ability to move around straight away from day one. This is the system they need to take going forward. It's fantastic. I can't stress it enough. It does mean, yeah, if your faction gives up fighting, you're not going to get anything. But that is no different from how it would be normally. This resolves an issue where there would be infighting and arguing and potentially backdoor deals with enemies who may have held out and held on to one thing. But if you have held out and held on to one thing and you do just try and give it up for something else, you've got to allow for the fact you're going to not just affect your own alliance here, you're going to affect everyone else. So whereas before, obviously, if your alliance held 2 labs at the end of the conquest, you would get what is shown on the screen just for your alliance. Now it's for everyone in the faction. Everyone in the coalition gets this reward. That is brilliant. It doesn't even have to be held by the same alliance. I think this is really good. I can't stress that enough. Something else I would like to point out that I think is great is the commander contribution rank. The commander contribution rank, I can't understand why they haven't introduced this sooner either. I mean, this is fantastic. If you're an aggressive player and you do not care about your kill-death ratio, and yes, there are players like that out there, I do see them play, and they love it. They absolutely love getting stuck in. Lose a grade 13 or a grade 14 or a grade 15, you earn contribution rank. Can this be cheesed? Of course this can be cheesed. But so can every other stat in the game be cheesed, so it's irrelevant. But when you're trying to push an objective and you're basically not receiving any reward for it because you're using the super heavy, you're using the MBT, you're using the infantry, and you're losing units, it can be quite disheartening and it can move people away from wanting to do that sort of gameplay. This is a great level of encouragement to get people moving into super heavies, to move them into infantry and move them into MBTs that would soak blast damage, heavy blast damage resistance bases. So I think this is great. As you can see, I'm ranked 30 currently. There are additional rewards for contributing. At the moment, I sit somewhere down here, which is not great. That's through no fault of my own. I have been playing. It's just that, if your enemy gives up and wants to spend a week in the safe zone, there's not much I can do about that, I'm afraid. Not yet, anyway. So this hopefully will go up in the next few days. They have started to realise that they're not going to be given anything for free. We're not going to give them anything. So they're going to have to fight for it, and they have started to move out of the safe zone. The problem with leaving this so late, guys, if you are in an alliance and you are a strategy officer, is if you leave it over 10 days before you start your attack is that the enemy is going to have those 10 days worth of funds in order to replace the units lost, and you've got the 10 days worth of funds to replace the losses, but it's going to cost you more, roughly 3-1, pushing out for an attack, which means you're going to drain those funds faster, and as a consequence you're going to go through reserves faster and your attack is going to slow down. And when that happens, you can't effectively counter push. This shouldn't really be a lecture on strategy. I will continue this another time. But there's also faction related prizes, so the factions that donate the most to AGs. And here's the thing, the contribution rank system is not just exclusively reserved for losses, it's also eliminating enemy units, it's also defeating Raven, it's also going after Raven bunkers. So if you're just active, you can get ranked very easily in this. You don't have to focus on your kill-death ratio anymore. The kill-death ratio is a good indicator as to whether or not a player is going to cost the enemy reserves. That is true. But it's also a good indicator as to tell you is whether or not they're going to be sitting inside their base. If you're going to look at someone, say they got 2 million kills and like under 1 million deaths, there's a high probability they're just going to sit inside their base and try and block builds. This is now going to throw a little bit of a spanner in the works for a lot of people because it's going to encourage attacking gameplay quite heavily. It's also going to encourage people going into L4s who are below level 32 into older servers, because if you can get in and run an army group inside the safe zone and you can just spend an hour or two every day knocking out bunkers for the Alliance, that's going to add up real quick. And I just want to anecdotally add, I done that when the enemies went into the safe zone for 2 days. And we got roughly 2 million points. We went from 100k behind to 2 million points in front because we just kept running bunkers for an afternoon for 2 days. It's worth it now. It's very much worth it. And then on top of that, you're getting rewards for this. You're getting Commander Contribution rank, which plays in at the end of the L4. But there's more. Because you get Commander Contribution points. Works the same way as the FM system does. So if you're familiar with the fighting machine and the amount of kills you need, you can see here, I've only got 7,690 kills at the top of the screen on the right, but my contribution rank is 507,000 points. So you can totally get stuff. I mean, I'm getting this contribution one right here. I'm gunning for that real fast. Because it's just really good. It encourages team play. And I can't stress enough, as a lot of people have said to me, hey, I don't like the Aegean Sea because people can just move around and block builds. Yeah, they can. But here's the thing. So can you. This L4 has by far been... I will be honest, I thought this was going to be a massive disappointment. I spoke to a number of people within the community. I said that I didn't think that the Navy had been integrated properly from the Sea of Azure or whatever the L3 is, and I didn't like it. I've come into the L4, I've completely changed my opinion. I just want them to release the tech trees so badly, because I genuinely think that this should be the standard of map they release. At the bare minimum, it is a very good map, and the additional mechanics and systems that they've placed in, and the restrictions they've lifted, and the restrictions they've added are absolutely outstanding. And I think if anyone from Lilith does ever watch this, as a player to the dev team, I would just like to say thank you for this map. And thank you for adding the contributions, and thank you for just what has been so far a mixture of an extremely frustrating and very entertaining L4. But that's enough ranting. I've been the Smoking Cheddar, you've been very patient. Yes, I know you didn't receive a video last week. I was waiting for certain individuals to see that video that hopefully by the time this video is edited and out, is the 18th today currently, the other video will have been released, hopefully this afternoon. So, yeah. I need to go sort out my Yorkshire puddings.